Welcome to the People Powered Community Podcast, where we dive into the inspiring stories of go-to-market professionals who have leveraged their skills to create strong and lasting connections within their community. Get ready to be inspired and learn how you too can harness your business superpower for good.
Hello and welcome to the People Powered Community Podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Greenwood, founder and CEO of Chief Evangelist Consulting. And today we are here with Mridvika Raisinghani. She's the co-founder and CEO of Sama and a host of Just an Ordinary Mom podcast. Welcome, Mridvika.
Thank you so much, Leslie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited for this conversation. So, Mridvika and I met, I'm sure the first time we met was on an APAC welcome call, which would have been at 10 p.m. my time, which I always loved. It was always such a great, now I didn't love it at 6 p.m. the same day, but at 10 p.m. I always loved it because I got to meet people from, the other side of the world and welcome them to Pavilion. And I met so many amazing people that way. So I think that was our first introduction, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think so. And even at 10 p.m., you were so lively and so energetic that you were giving all of us run for money and we were dialing in at around 8 a.m. here, India time. So you did a really good job welcoming us, Leslie.
Oh, thank you. I think maybe I was just super peppy because my husband was annoyed that I was sitting at the kitchen table talking while he was trying to watch sports. So, just added a little extra in here. So, well, that's awesome. So tell us a little bit about you. I mean, we had a great time just catching up here. So much has changed, especially becoming a co-founder and a CEO since we met last. So I'd love to hear about what you've been doing, what you're doing now, etc.
Sure. So Leslie, it's always easy to, look backwards and then connect the dots. And because I have that vantage point, I can tell you what I'm doing now and how I got where I got to. But today, I'm building a company called Sama that is, whose mission is to advance gender equity at workplaces and make future of work more equitable for everyone. We are starting with gender as our first premise, but we hope that we build organizations that are more inclusive all around. So that's what I'm currently doing. And one of the creative interests I have is I also run a podcast called Just an Ordinary Mom, which allows me to document oral histories of women who've chosen to become mothers and yet chosen to continue working in their careers. The underlying word here being choice, because that's what, the intent to explore was when I started the podcast. And also, frankly, to help women see other women succeed. So that's essentially, what keeps me inspired with the podcast. Looking backwards, I have about 17 years of experience across a variety of sectors and organizations that were purpose-driven. I started my career as a computer engineer, found myself in the US as a consultant with one of the big four organizations, and then came back to India for, working with a nonprofit called Teach for India. Most part of my career has been around fundraising, business development, P&L ownership, strategic partnerships, kind of a generalist role. I've worked across ed tech companies, HR tech companies, nonprofits, and service-based companies. So that's a little bit about where I am on the professional side of things. In terms of my family, I have twin boys. They are 10-year-old now, and I live in Mumbai with my family.
That's amazing. Well, I think it's based on what we talked earlier. I would love for you to tell us a little bit of those stats that you said about women in the workplace in India. And I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into that because I found that incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that shook us, and when I say us, it's me and my co-founder, was the fact that only 9% of urban Indian women were gainfully employed. And, we live in a microcosm, thinking that, people around us, they are all working and they are financially independent. And this statistic made us pause. And we were wondering, where are the 91%? Did they leave out of their own volition? Did we as a system, we as companies fail the expectations and aspirations of these women? Because on a relative term, women living in urban India are, have better access to education, resources, finances. So we think that they are, better equipped to, have professional careers that are longer term in nature. And at least in urban India, the participation rate should be equal, if not more, between genders. But we were very surprised ourselves when we came across that statistic. And just to give you another statistic that will help you understand this a little bit better. About 48% of graduates in India are girls, women today, of which 32% enter the workforce. So there's a huge drop between the ones who graduate and the ones who enter the workforce. And that gap is because women get married, they move, there's migration and a whole host of things that, women face early on in their lives and careers. But from the 32%, barely 15% reach mid-managerial levels and less than 2% are at executive levels. So this leaky bucket is far more grim in urban context than we sort of see in literature and academic research that gets put out there. So that was what we were interested in to kind of solve through the work that we are doing at Sama, which is how can we arrest the leak? How can we retain women before we kind of put our foot on the accelerator to bring more women back? Because you can try and put more women in on the top of the funnel, but if they are going to leave because the workplace isn't supportive or the problems continue to exist, then you're not going to be able to retain them long enough. So the work that we're doing at Sama is focused on retention and making organizations or helping organizations, build equitable workplaces for women.
Mm-hmm. I imagine this, although not to this degree, this story sounds very familiar. It's similar to what we talk about, in America, although I believe that the statistics are definitely not quite in that range. So I think that the issue you're addressing, although maybe more grave in India, is a global issue that we're seeing, everywhere. So I love that you're bringing light to that and providing targeted solutions through your product rather than like generalizations and things like that. And I think that's what's was really impressed with Sama based on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the other thing I caught on as we were discussing earlier is that you've definitely, at least in your recent career, focused more on or realized the understanding for you that you needed to be in a mission-driven company. Can you tell us a little bit about that realization?
Sure. So I grew up much like a typical kid of 80s and 90s where, parents without saying expected you to take up a professional degree course, which meant a more stable career, a job. And fortunately or unfortunately, those two options for Indian kids growing up in those times were either you can become a doctor or you could become an engineer because they were stable career paths and whatnot. I come from a family of doctors, so I gravitated to become an engineer because I'd seen the lives of people in my family, which were quite tough. And so I took up computer engineering, but I only realized after I started as a software engineer that I don't see myself coding and testing for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And so that exploration took me to the US, and I was working in a consulting firm, had a fantastic experience, working with multinational clients, sitting in rooms with CXOs and trying to sort of learn, world-class skills on client handling and pitching and making beautiful decks and traveling across the country, Monday through Thursday. But soon I think I realized, I think I hit a quarter life crisis sooner than I would have liked to. And I think a lot of that had to do with the realization that I had won the ovarian lottery. I had been born in a family that could afford all of these experiences for me. My parents were supportive. They were okay for me to go pursue education outside of my home country, pursue a career there. But there were so many who were less fortunate. Had I just been born on the other side of the railway track, I would have not been that fortunate. And so that realization, kind of led me to believe that everything I have access to is a function of, the quality of education that I received. And what can I do to extend the same quality of education to, every child in my country? And a part of that inspiration was also driven from my mom's work. So she's a professor of English literature, but after her academic career, she worked with deputation projects with UNICEF and World Bank, which also kind of exposed me to the development sector and the impact that some of these projects could have on lives of people and could change their life trajectories completely. So that brought me back to India, and I worked with Teach for India, which was on a mission to, build a pipeline of leaders who would commit themselves to educational equity, solving educational inequity in the country. So that's how my fascination or obsession for working with purpose-driven organizations really started. So I spent over 5.5 years as a fundraising professional with this nonprofit, and then I moved into working with an edtech startup that was on a path to building technology apps to personalize education. Now, I grew up in India where there were 40, 50 kids in a classroom. So forget personalizing learning paths for every child. Teachers couldn't tell the difference between the two kids sitting on the same desk. So, personalizing learning paths was very, very unique concept back then. And I gravitated towards that. And as a fundraising professional, it gave me an opportunity to raise funds from VCs and private equity players. So it was a different kind of fundraising, but nevertheless, I continued and built on, those core skills. And then when I joined my last held full-time role with a US-based HR tech company called Shortlist, they were on a mission to democratize access to jobs, regardless of what pedigree you come with. So I think that spoke to me again, because I come from a small town where, the two paths that one could traverse is either medicine or engineering. And here we were making sure that we unlock professional potential by matching individuals with jobs that they love. And so that essentially was, the meaning and the purpose that, or the story at least that I told myself. And so looking backwards, I was able to connect the dots and see why I worked where I worked. And I also realized that my ability to choose to work at these organizations comes from a lot of privilege, right? Like, so I don't deny the fact that the very fact that I can make these choices, the very fact that I can choose where I have to work, already sort of puts me in a category where I understand that I sit on a lot of privilege. So I do want to kind of use that privilege in a way that allows me to make that useful for others in my network or my contemporaries, so that they are able to unlock their potential as well.
That's awesome. You can totally see, as you tell that story, you can see it come full circle. You know, it just, there's a thread that runs throughout, and it was just like, you were destined to be where you are based on the way that you think, the way that you analyze situations, and now and really just using it to help other women now, but overall in general. So it's inspiring. Well, let's talk a little bit about your superpower. So you gave me a little taste of that in our intake form. So give us a clue.
So I think it's the benefit of the gray hair and the hindsight more than anything else that's led me to realize that my superpower is connecting the dots and making connections. And what I mean by that is I'm able to look at conversations at a meta level and able to sort of plug the gaps, and that allows me to kind of strengthen my relationships from a very, very strategic and long-term perspective, as opposed to looking at relationships at a very, very transactional or a tactical level. So that I think has worked in my favor, where I'm able to still pick up a call and go back to a donor who I had worked as a fundraiser back in my nonprofit days, or go back to a client, and ask them for this or that. Or maybe just like connect to really passionate or professional individuals who I know can do great things together. This superpower allows me to feed on the energy that I need to sort of keep myself up and going. So I think that's why, just building relationships, connecting the dots, and connecting people, helps me helps me in my both personal and professional lives.
I like that. It's interesting that like you just said, your superpower, obviously it benefits you in ways of business and relationships, but then it gives you so much personal satisfaction to continue to like get you out there and continue to do the work that you do.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it is very, very gratifying to go to bed knowing that you've made a difference to, someone's life, because, you were able to think about how this connection would be beneficial to them, or how you could, leverage, on the network that you've built.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. Where do you think that came from? Where did that originate? Because I'm imagining that's, it's not just a professional skill. Like there's something in you that brought that to light.
I think, as I said, right, like I feed on the energy of other people, right? Like that keeps me going. And I don't think I had realized it until I assumed my fundraising role, because, I think that was the first role in my career that required me to build relationships, nurture relationships, build communities. And therefore, that was probably the time that I started to see the impact of doing it and doing it well. And that, I think that was the realization. And I think it manifested in many different ways. Like I recall this one particular example of, I was trying to get to the CEO of one of the global banks. And, week after week, the meeting used to get rescheduled or whatever. And I decided to have build my relationship with the secretary or the executive assistant in a way that, this person became, so pally with me. Like they would call me and say, hey, I know you work with an education nonprofit. My son has to write an essay on, the state of education in India. Can you review that essay? And I'd be like, sure, why not? And I'd be glad and happy to talk to this kid who was in his early teens, and maybe sort of just, leave a spark of inspiration, or leave a seed of inspiration with the child. But in the same breath, like, this person felt that they owed me something, and they had to kind of set up this meeting with the CEO, right? So I obviously didn't do it with the only focus of getting the meeting with the CEO. I really genuinely wanted to help the child and kind of help the mother in return. But that kind of helped me get in front of the CEO and obviously make our fundraising pitch and whatnot. But that was just a very simple example of when it started to occur to me that this could be my superpower, or this is what I was good at, and I should continue to build on this strength.
Mm-hmm. It's very similar to what I would say what I will continue to say when I talk to community members who want to know how to get the most out of their experience, which is you will go around planting seeds, which is basically you giving value to people. You will tend and water them over time. Don't know when the amount of time is. Could be a year, 2 years, 3 years. You never know.
Yeah.
And then one day there will be a harvest. Now, what that harvest is, we don't know. Maybe it's a friendship. Maybe it is a commercial relationship. You never know what it's going to be, but maybe it's not with that person, but you've sown enough seeds that maybe, like it spread to someone else, so it's just so important to really think about that. And it's interesting in these podcast interviews, of course, I gravitate to a certain kind of person. So of course the people that I find interesting, probably feel similarly to me on how they, do business and how they approach community. And it's been such a very direct thread in these interviews of people who think very similarly to that and obviously have, garnered the success out of that. So I love that. I love the way you tell that story. And I just think it really makes a great point of like this entire, like, if I would bang it into every person's head that's ever in a community, please just do this. You will get, you will get quote unquote paid. Just give me time,
Yeah. Yeah, I think we just need to look at relationships almost like the seed that you sow, like literally if one can visualize in the sand, in the ground, and you keep nurturing it, you keep watering it, and it will bear flowers or fruits or whatever, when the time is right. And even if they don't, like, they are, plants that will be around for everyone's benefit. So I always live by that mantra of give before you get. And that's super, super important to me personally as a value that I operate with.
Yeah. Well, and obviously, I mean, that is your ethos in business has been that you're basing it on giving. And I love that. It feels so authentic because oftentimes, people say that, but the actions don't actually match the words. So I love that it's, you're saying it, you're acting on it, your company is doing it. And so, I don't know, 2 super thumbs up on that one.
Thank
well,
you.
What do you do to like, is there anything you do to kind of like keep that skill nurtured or develop it or yeah.
Yeah. So I think I try to the extent possible to, take meetings and meet people that I find interesting, and also kind of test if I am interesting enough for people to meet me. Right. Like, so it's because like, my story or, the way I come across it, it needs polishing every few, months, weeks or whatever.
Sure.
Right. Like, so, it helps me. It's almost like a symbiotic relationship. When I meet people that I find interesting, I walk away with a thing or two that I've learned new about a new industry, about a new sector, about a new function, or a new thing that's happening in that space. And also, based on how I get perceived, I get feedback on what I need to do better in the next conversation myself. So I think lately I have tried to protect my time, but I have still figured out days in the month where I will consciously go out and meet people and make sure that I'm always keeping my network growing. I think I have a list. It's a funny Excel sheet which has multiple tabs, and it has one tab which says, "One day when I start business, these are the people I want to talk to for whatever reason." I have another tab which basically is like, "These are the people I want to hire. Like if I ever get to a stage where I am able to hire a number of people." There's another tab for, okay, connect this to this person, because at some point there'll be. They'll kind of have a mutually beneficial conversation. So I have like this large spreadsheet that I've built over a period of time, which is which now takes time to load because it has so many names and so many different columns and so many. That's what consultants do. Like they make everything about Excel sheets, but yeah, it's kind of helped me go back to it to see so that I don't ever have to start my network from scratch. It's kind of my personal CRM, if I could call it that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's great. And one thing that you were thinking about that made me think is I had a conversation with Paul Abdul the other day. He's from Canada. And he's also like his superpower was when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. So like when he's like, when I say I want to have coffee the next time I'm in Richmond, Virginia, he actually is like, hey, I'm coming to Richmond, Virginia. Do you want to have coffee? And one thing I picked up from him, and I have not put it on my calendar yet, is, he has it twice a week of who did I meet two new people who are two new people I want to meet every Tuesday and Thursday. For me, I'm going to do it once a week. Two new people that I want to meet, once a week, because just like you, it's like growing that network, making those connections. And although I think I naturally do that because that's just my personality. But I think that, as my business grows, et cetera, making that a habit is something that's be important to me. And I can imagine, especially you now being a founder, and like you said, your time is pulled in so many different directions, but having, at least one intentional reminder that you will continue to do that, and keep time for that, I think is really smart.
Yeah. And I think I also realized that I'm inherently a curious person. Like when I want to know, or when I speak to someone, I really do want to know them and know about them and what their life story has been and what brought them to where they are today. What were those long winding paths that they took? What were some of the trade-offs, the decisions that they took to where they are today? So I'm really genuinely curious to just know about stories. And I tell my parents, like, if I had not been what I am today, I'd probably be like a journalist who just keeps interviewing people and just getting to know them more, or documenting oral histories of individuals.
I think probably why you and I both are running a podcast now, because I've found I of course started it thinking about like commercial things. I'm just like, I just really love talking to these people.
Yeah.
And so now I just get so much personal joy and understanding and learning out of it as well. So it's been great. Well, last thing I'll ask you before we close up for today. So there's someone out there that's like, man, I have that same superpower as Mridvika. What would you tell them? What's the skill or what's one takeaway you could give them to help them develop that and use it more in their business or personal life?
Sure. I think one of the things that has worked out for me beautifully is cold outreach. And what I mean by cold outreach is meaningful, thoughtful, well-researched outreach to someone who you really, really want to connect. If you take, 15 to 20 minutes to just find out about this person, what they're currently doing, and write to them why you really want to connect with them. I mean, I don't want to jinx this, but like 9 out of 10 times I have received a response. Mm-hmm. And, I think the, cold outreach is so undervalued and such an underrated skill or technique to build your network or connections that, that I kind of want to debunk that myth that, stop reaching out to people cold. Yes, warm introductions always help, but, cold outreaches don't disappoint you if you have intentionally spent the time. And what I mean by personalized emails is like no two people in the world are going to get the same email from you. Mm-hmm. If I write to Leslie, I know she, is a community builder, and I know that I've worked with or I have interacted with her or crossed paths with her while I was, a member at Pavilion, and therefore, there is, a request for, 30-minute time on her calendar, etc., etc. And no other person is going to get like the same templatized email from me because I've taken that time to write that specifically for this person. And that trick has always worked for me. But I don't want to jinx it, but I just want to share that that's one tip.
Just knocking on a little wood over here for you. And I'd say two things that I would just add. One is, steal your trick of the Excel sheet. People you want to meet, people you want to hire, people you have met. Make your own personal CRM. That's basically what my HubSpot is. It's every one of my notes starts with, I met so-and-so. She has 2 kids. They're 2 and 5. Their birthdays are next week. And, then the business part of it. So like keeping track of that stuff, being methodical about it, because we all can't remember that. And the other thing is, when you think about community, which is, like how we met, there's cold outreach that can be warm inside a community. So like you post something. I love your question. I have a thought on your question. Or I thought it was insightful. I DM you and say, hey, Mridvika, I really loved your post. I liked XYZ. I think about it this way. I was wondering if you wouldn't mind meeting for a virtual coffee.
Sure.
I don't know you at that point, but I'm still doing the same thing. And I think that's one of the values of my communities that people don't think about. I mean, you don't just say, hey, can I have 15 minutes? It's like, hey, I saw your post. I really liked it. And, in many communities, you're going to get a favorable response. And, so even, of course, there's the emails and the LinkedIn DMs and stuff like that. But if you're in a vibrant community, like, don't let that pass you by. It's sitting right there waiting for you to take advantage of it.
For sure. For sure.
Awesome. Well, Mridvika, it's been such a great episode today. I appreciate you taking your time, sharing your story with me and our listeners. I know we can connect with you on LinkedIn. And also, I'd just say, everybody take a look at her website, samalives.com, and just see what they're up to. Is there anywhere else that people can find you?
Yeah, we are on all the socials, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. People can just look for, if they go to the LinkedIn web page, they'll probably be easily redirected to each of these socials.
Got it. Well, I'm expanding into different socials, so I'm going to go follow you on the other ones just so I can keep up to date. So, well, Mridvika, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you talking to me at 8 p.m. at night, and we'll talk really soon. Thank you all for listening. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Leslie, for the opportunity. Pleasure's been mine.